minutes of April 14th, and a community recognition candidate, which is personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal employees. Can I have a mover and a seconder to go into close? Councillor Andrews and Councillor Prendergast, all in favor? That is carried. We are now in closed session. Good evening, everyone. We're going to call tonight's meeting to order. We will begin with the singing of our national anthem, and I'd ask that you rise if you're able.
O Canada, a home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
We would like to acknowledge the treaty lands and territory of the Williams Treaty Nations and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. We also recognize that Dufferin County is the traditional territory of the Wendat and the Haudenosaunee and is home to many Indigenous people today. Tonight's meeting is being aired on public television and/or streamed live and may be taped for later public broadcast or webcast. Your name is part of the public record and will be included in the minutes of tonight's meeting. Any member of the public connecting via telephone is reminded to press *6 to mute and unmute, and we ask that you please remain muted until the chair requests comments or questions from the public. We did have a closed session ahead of our open meeting tonight, and the recommendation coming out of closed is that the minutes of the April 14th, 2025 closed council meeting be approved, and that the community recognition candidate discussion be received, and that staff proceed as directed. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Stevens and Councillor McIntosh, all in favor? And that is carried. We do have the minutes from the May 12th meeting that need to be approved. Can I have a mover and a seconder to approve those? Councillor Andrews and Councillor Prendergast, all in favor? And that is carried. We are now in the open portion of the meeting. Any member of the public connecting via telephone is reminded to press *6 to mute and unmute, and that they have a maximum of 3 minutes to address council. Jerry, was there anybody on the line? Okay, was there anybody in the gallery who wished to participate in open forum? James? And just a reminder, James, that we'll need your name and address.
Okay. James Jackson, 50 Carlton Drive, Orangeville. Mine actually, it's in regards to 1315, the transit change. I understand that of why our buses can't get into some places or why we're limiting the access and that. And that's not, well, I'm coming up here to ask that we get together with the county, maybe even town of Shelburne and town of Orangeville, and do a pilot program for a wheel-trans type thing for people who have accessibility issues, wheelchairs, walkers, canes and that. Because our transit, if we're going to limit access like into Sobeys Plaza, so you're now going to be dropping people off further away from getting to places like Sobeys and that. If we had a wheel-trans, it's a smaller vehicle and that can get into that places like that, even to our hospitals or doctors' offices or whatever. I was just thinking that if we can get together with the county and Shelburne and ourselves, and we do a pilot program of a wheel-trans. That was my thought and suggestion.
Thank you, James. Appreciate your feedback. That's something that the deputy mayor and I can take to the county and see if there's an ability to start talking about that. The county has just implemented some additions to their transit routes as well. So it's not something that could be quickly implemented. We've just recently expanded seniors transit within the county to ensure that seniors in the county have the opportunity to get rides to places like grocery stores and banks and pharmacies as part of the seniors community service program that they already have for transit. We've also just recently expanded our transit system to now operate and include from Shelburne to Orangeville. There will be a new route starting in the next little while. So there have already been a couple of enhancements to transit in that way, but it's definitely something that Deputy Mayor and I can bring to the Director of Community Services there just to see what opportunities may exist.
Thank you.
Thanks, James. Appreciate your feedback. Was there anybody else who wished to participate in the open forum? Okay, seeing none, we will move into presentations, petitions, and delegations. We will start with Sandy Dorfler and Sandra Wellman, who are coming up to talk about fees associated with fitness classes at the Orangeville Recreation Centers. Yes, it is.
Oh, yes, it is.
Yep, you're good.
It is on. Okay. Hello, Mayor Post and Council. My name is Sandra Wellman, and I live at 796010 3rd Line East in Mulmer, and I'm presenting the senior fitness members of the Town of Orangeville's fitness program. Ms. Dorfler of 72 Pheasant Court is here with me, along with some of our 72 petition signers. Today, I would like to compare the fitness fees in Orangeville with the surrounding area. I would also like to show you why Orangeville needs an affordable monthly and yearly membership to maintain our health and well-being. Next slide, please. In Orangeville, we presently have a drop-in 3-month fee, which, if shown in a yearly amount, costs our seniors $338.80 per year. The new fees being proposed this fall will cost between $1,758 and $3,516 per year. If a senior goes to one fitness class a day, it'll cost $1,758, and this increase is 500%. It is unaffordable by most seniors who are on a fixed income. If a senior goes to 2 classes a day, then the yearly cost will be $3,516 per year. This is 1,000% increase in cost. And most, if not all, seniors cannot afford this. Let's take a look at the surrounding areas. At the top of the map, we see Alliston's yearly membership fee of $339.50. This is very comparable to what we pay now in Orangeville. Going clockwise around the map, we see yearly memberships in Caledon at $387, Vaughan at $413, Brampton at $286, and Mississauga at $425. Please note, Brampton and Mississauga have free yearly memberships for all seniors 65 and up. At the bottom of the map, we see Milton's yearly membership at $363, Guelph's at $475, and Elora at $631 per year. In Orangeville, there is no yearly membership at this time. Next slide, please. So looking at the information, which is kind of small up there, but I guess it's better on the computers. In a chart form, please notice that Orangeville presently has a 3-month drop-in fee of $84.70 to $132.34. I've used the smallest amount of $84.70 to calculate a cost of $338.80 per year. On the second and third lines are the you will see the fall fees that are coming. In these 2 lines showing the fall fees, the monthly pass has been removed, and now Orangeville will not provide a monthly or yearly membership. Please notice that Caledon, Alliston, Guelph, Elora, Brampton, Vaughan, Mississauga, and Milton all provide at least 1 monthly drop-in fee and 1 yearly membership fee. So they all, in that surrounding area, they all provide one. Some also provide a 3-month drop-in fee. Also, Brampton and Mississauga provide yearly memberships for free to seniors 65 and up. And next slide, please. So what are we asking for? Please keep our fee schedule the same as it was last year. Please add an affordable monthly and yearly membership for individuals. Keep these in a drop-in format. Stop and do not add any more Get Active passes or pre-registered instructor-led classes. Please keep our memberships affordable and help us remain socially active, mentally healthy, and physically fit as you have done so well in the past. Last but not least, keep the drop-in classes for working folks in the evenings and for daytime Aquafit members. It would mean the world to us to be able to attend classes on a daily basis, just as we do now. Unfortunately, this will not be possible under the new fee schedule passed for the fall. And one last wondering we have, when would a decision about the fall fee schedule be made, please? And thank you for your time and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here and for your presentation. I have some thoughts that I'd like to share with council, but before I do that, was there any questions that anybody had for the presenter? Yeah, Deputy Mayor.
Just really quickly, thank you so much for your presentation. It was well thought out, and you're super polite, which is really nice and appreciated. It's funny, we're all here together, right? We all own the town. We all want things to go well. Just a few thoughts, if I could. And Mayor Post, I don't know where you're going to go, but I always think when you're going to do these things, if we're going to sit in these chairs, we should offer our thoughts and be transparent with everyone. So first off, I do agree. I mean, we should review this and come back to the people in the room with what that process could be. Okay. There's some things in here that I always think is interesting. So first off, if you were going to run any sort of social endeavor in the town, it is not meant to make money. People always look at it and they think, oh, you counselors, you don't know what you're doing. Like if it was me, I'd run it like a business. Yeah. It's not a business. It's people's lives. People use libraries. We don't make money on libraries. People use pools. We don't make money on pools, right? It's just the way that it works. We all look after each other so that we can all use these facilities collectively. That could be my philosophy and nobody else's, but that's mine. You're not going to make money on public enterprises like this. The issue is we're in a small town. And here's the problem. We're in a crunch, right? Like you can see it. We've got an issue at Tony Rose. We can't open the pool. We don't have the money to run the pool. So it's putting pressure on one building. And so just to put it in the back of your mind, the free at 65, I love seniors and I'm going to be one myself in the not too distant future here. And I don't want to be disrespectful to anyone. It's difficult to do that, right? So that would be one thought process, being as transparent as I can be. Same as it was, which was prior year. Each year costs go up. So, I'd have to look into the details and understand exactly what the costs were. But same as it was is a very dangerous path. Like you fall behind if you leave it same as it was because things have gone up, right? Inflation happens each year. So it's very, very difficult for us to do that. And then the last piece would be is I would really want to, and I caution everybody, but this is my theme, Orangeville taxpayers pay for those buildings. Orangeville taxpayers pay for the run of those buildings. Orangeville taxpayers are overtaxed. They've been overtaxed for a long period of time. So just candidly, and my neighbors get angry with me for this, but if you live in Mona, when you're using our facilities, unfortunately, you're going to pay more than what an Orangeville resident pays. And you need to do that. You need to pay for the capital costs. You need to pay for the operational costs because the Orangeville residents are. And I think that's just fair. You're welcome to come. We open your arms to you, but if you're an out-of-towner, that's the way it has to be. So I'll turn it to you, Mayor Post, or anybody else on council, but I did want to offer those as just suggestions to get us started.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Was there any other questions for members of council? No, not at this time. Okay, so where I wanted to start with was first by thanking everybody because we have received lots of emails, lots of phone calls, lots of commentary about this issue. And every single one of them has been heard. We've taken every email and passed it on. We've taken it very seriously. And I want all of you to know that your feedback matters legitimately. Going back a little bit, the unlimited pass was initially introduced with a goal of increasing access and encouraging the participation at our recreation facilities. And that goal remains important. But we've also identified some of the challenges and unintended consequences of the pass. And a few of them include, when we've got people attending multiple instructor-led classes every day, it's taking away spots from people who then can't access them. So we know that there's sometimes the classes get full, and they're full with participants who've already attended 2 other classes that day. So that's been a bit of a challenge. Additionally, there's been a challenge when something has happened at a recreation facility and a program has had to change. So when Swim for Life was taking over the pool and some of our regular instructor-led swimming classes had to be canceled, there were some members and participants with the unlimited passes who expected that staff was going to give them a refund because they weren't able to attend those classes. And it's simply unrealistic to think that we can continue that way. When we do have to make a change, it's being made with the intent that there's something else that's taking priority, and we're not going to be able to issue refunds to people because they've missed a class, because really they haven't, right? But that's happening daily at our arenas, so we know that that's a continued problem that we're having. Over the past couple of weeks, though, as all of these concerns about the planned increase have come in, we've had ongoing internal discussions amongst ourselves as council, but also with the staff, all the staff at the recreation facilities, because we want to find a path forward. We want to find one that's fair, one that's financially responsible, and one that responds to the ongoing needs of the community. And I really, truly think we can get there. I really do. There is, I believe, a way that we can keep the unlimited pass option in place, but with some adjustments that address the concerns that we've raised and ensure that the program is sustainable for a longer term. So at this point, what we need to do is balance the access with accountability. And I'm really confident that with more thoughtful collaboration and discussion, we can land on a solution that works for everyone. And we're not quite there yet. Like I said, those discussions have begun, and we're trying to figure out what the best path forward would be. So with that in mind, the thing that I would like to ask council for tonight, I'd like to move a motion that formally directs staff to work on a solution that retains, and I don't want to call it an unlimited pass, but a quarterly pass that has those necessary updates. I'd like to ask that staff report back to council at our July meeting with some options that could be implemented in September as planned. So it will remain status quo until those changes take place. And I do want to tell the group there are going to have to be changes that are made if we want to keep an unlimited pass or a quarterly pass. Because the way that it is right now isn't working well. I know that it's working well for some of you, but it's not working well for everybody. And it's most certainly not working well on the town side as well. So we have to be able to balance those things. So that would be my ask of council. If I could have a seconder to that motion. Councillor McIntosh, was there any other questions or thoughts, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you very much, Mayor Post. I think that makes a lot of sense. My thought would be, though, too, is if we could have in your motion, maybe as a subset, that there should be consideration for seniors. So what is the plan for over 65? And again, just declaring again, repeating myself, that I am not in favor of free for seniors. We need the revenue to continue these programs. So I just want to tell everybody where I'm coming from. And then the second sub-bullet would be an out-of-town solution, because it needs to be entirely different than what an Orangeville resident would be.
So, Ms. Doherty, do you have thoughts?
Thank you, Mayor Post. Through to you, to Deputy Mayor Taylor. There is a 25% non-resident fee applied to all of our programs and passes.
Yes.
I just want to make sure that we're not going to be changing that as we go.
No.
Yeah. Okay. So does that need to be in the motion as well, that consideration be taken for how seniors will be addressed and how non-residents will be addressed? So we can make sure that that's part of the comments. Okay, perfect. Any additional questions or thoughts? No? So I'll ask for the vote. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Again, thank you very, very much for being here, and stay tuned to the July meeting, because we'll have a report coming back from staff in July then, as per my motion, which will cover off and give us suggestions as council on how we can move forward.
Well, thank you very much, everybody, for considering it, because we really appreciate it.
Yep, no problem. Thank you so much.
It was a great presentation. Thank you.
Okay, we will now bring up Darla Fraser, the library CEO, and Peter LeBlanc, the chair of the Orangeville Library Board, to talk about the annual survey and Valuing Ontario Libraries Toolkit.
Good evening. I'm just gonna, now, I will also be polite, Deputy Mayor Taylor. And I was so glad to hear you talk about the idea of libraries as a service and not making money. That takes a lot of pressure off us as well. Thank you. I just wanted to ask a tech question. I thought I was advancing the slides, but I'm not sure that I'm going to be. I can. Look at that. There you go. Good evening, Mayor Post, to the councillors and staff. My name is Peter LeBlanc. I am the chair of the Orangeville Public Library Board. Of course, here with me is Darla Fraser, our CEO. We also have board member Bill Ray, and we have some staff joining us. We have Raghav, Shannon, and Kim, who are here in the gallery as well. And we are here to thank you for all of your support and to highlight some of the accomplishments that we were able to deliver with that support. I am not way ahead. The last time the board and council were together, we talked about the synergy between the library and council's strategic plans, both rooted in community. These are just a few examples on screen of the common outcomes sought in both plans, aligning the library's strategic direction to specific objectives from the town's plan. Tonight, we are here to check in with both gratitude for council's continued support, as well as with excitement for the future of our library services. We're excited to share an overview of our results from 2024, now that all the numbers for our key performance indicators and operational metrics have been calculated, reviewed, reported on, and submitted as required. We're proud to report that we experienced growth in all areas, due in large part to a full year of service out of the newly renovated Carnegie Library on Mill Street, possible only with the support of this council. So let's start with a quick visual of just how truly far we have come. This is one of the rare photos of the interior of the Mill Street Library shortly after it opened. The original Carnegie Library, it built at the turn of the last century with the support of yet another forward-thinking council who sought and secured funding through the Carnegie Foundation. And our town councils have been supporting the library ever since. This ongoing support for continuous improvement allows us to provide venues and programs that enhance the health and well-being of our patrons. In 2024, we had more than 120,000 visits. And we're not done. 2025 will bring the launch of our Exploratorium, adding a new level of innovation that will increase the town's corporate capacity through a more modern approach to our delivery of service. We'll present to council at a later date and provide an update on our Exploratorium. Now here, as one of our 3 strategic directions, the library connects with people, ideas, and information, and enhances the community's livability by offering programs and events that foster cultural pursuits and enrich lives. The top number that you see here represents our 2024 data so that you can see the annual increases between the 3 metrics on screen. By collaborating closely with groups and agencies that cultivate positive, supportive connections, we empower these community champions to work together and share their resources and expertise. The metric displayed on the screen represents program attendees, tallied from more than 400 different programs delivered. And of note, 35% of those programs delivered in 2024 resulted from community partnerships. Of course, we connect people to information, staying true to our core service, with over 150,000 books borrowed last year. Our diverse programming is designed to serve the entire community, aligning with the principles of lifelong learning and intellectual freedom. While we offer many drop-in programs, there has been an increase in registered programs, particularly as we host evening events at Mill when the library is closed to the public. Membership is not required to participate in these programs. Another one of our strategic directions, our aim is for the public to continue discovering new ideas, new talents, and new interests, helping our patrons become the best versions of themselves. We strive to provide appropriate options in our digital collection, which has seen a double-digit increase again this year. The rise in foot traffic is no surprise given our reopening and our current offerings. And our third strategic direction is SOAR. The library board has made a concerted effort to be present in the community at various events and celebrations. We want council to trust that this library board, while primarily focused on library services, is fully committed to supporting the town's vision and plan. Both governing bodies are committed to delivering fiscally responsible municipal services, and we trust that council will continue to invest in this vital service. The number of members continues to increase monthly, and we have a new tool to determine the social return on investment, something that, although we will summarize this evening, we would love to return to share in greater detail at a future council meeting. The library is good investment in the future of our community. The last year, we touched on this topic briefly. This is a tool developed by researchers at the Nordic Institute and professors from Algoma University, along with the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Gaming's arm's length agency and the Ontario Library Services. This is called the VOLT. The social return on investment calculates the impact of a public library in monetary value, representing the valuation of goods and services that are offered free of charge. Despite the OPL board's limited option for generating revenue, it's noteworthy that for each municipal dollar invested in the Orangeville Public Library, the social return on investment was $4.69. Means the total economic benefit generated by the library was close to $10 million, equating to almost $900 per household. The cost to taxpayers was just over $2 million, resulting in a 649% return on investment. Investing in Orangeville Public Library makes sense economically, intellectually, socially, and culturally as we help our community connect, discover, and soar. We want to thank you for your time. We know you have a busy agenda, but we're happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much. Was there any questions? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much for your presentation. You are a great presenter as well, so thank you very much for that. That was good stuff. I love ROI. I've never heard the term social ROI in the way that you've done that number. And when you were going through, it was interesting. The 469 number, which you quoted, which I think is last year, was $1 higher than
correct
the year before. I'd love to understand how you get to that. But I do agree with your premise. Like it's this social, cultural hub of what we do. And I've always thought, how do we know what that is? And I gave that speech that I just gave before about how we always lose money. And I think that that's right. And I'm fine with that because it's about the fabric of the community. But you're doing something entirely different. And I'd love to understand how you got that and how we increased year over year.
Okay. So
and where we're going.
And through you, Madam Mayor. So what the tool, which is called the VOLT, which measures the social return on investment, and I will state that at this point, it's Ontario-wide, and its libraries continuing to gather data. So it began in 2023, it's been gathering 2024, and will continue to gather 2025 data. And it actually looks at a series of parameters, everything from education, culture, entertainment and leisure, to space, engagement, economic development, and it actually attaches a monetary value to those services that are provided. So for example, one of the reasons why our SROI has increased so much in 2024 is because of the added available space that we would have had available to our patrons through the renovation at the Mill Street Library. So that would be one example. But then again, increases in membership, increases in access to library services, increasing in program, increases in both our digital collection and our print collection also add to our increase in return on investment. But the tool is a work in progress, but we would love to come to talk to council in a little bit more detail as well to talk about the background of the tool and where it came from and how the numbers are arrived to.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
So respectfully, like it's brilliant. It's brilliant. It's absolutely kind of a metric that we would need to know. With all due respect, it without the methodology, and so I'd love for you to come back and love to talk about this some more. It feels fluffy, right? Like what is that? How do you even come with that? It sounds great. And I think there's merit to it for sure. So I'm not trying to diminish what you're saying, but until we understand how you got there and we can explain it, it's just hard to, like, I don't know if I could stand up on an election stage and say, hey, we did all this at the library and the SROI is now this, you know what I mean? It just doesn't feel like it's there. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Stevens, then Councillor Prendergast, then Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, through your worship. Thank you, great presentation. Mine is under Connect. Out of the 9,200 attendees and the 158,000 items borrowed, do you guys break it down to residents, non-residents? And, sorry, go ahead.
Just in membership, not in sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Through you, your worship, to Councillor Stevens. We don't break down the, okay, now I lost my train of thought.
You don't break it down to like non-residents, or you just for membership?
Just for membership, not for,
Attendees at-
yeah.
Attendees at programs don't require membership.
Okay.
So no, we're not recording where people are coming from.
Okay, but for membership you are? Sorry. I should go
Absolutely.
through.
And there is a charge for non-members,
Perfect.
for non-residents.
Thank you.
Councillor Prendergast, then Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Mayor Post. And thank you for your presentation, Ms. Fraser and Monsieur LeBlanc. I love the concept of measuring a library's social return on investment. It's very powerful when we think about the broader implications of what libraries offer to our community, supporting equity, inclusion, community well-being, and offering that third space for people to meet with no implication on their wallets. And how could we as a council and a community best support the continued growth and impact of the public library?
Through you, Madam Mayor. How can you, so if I understand the question correctly, is how can council continue to support the library? I mean, I would state as chair of the board that our council has been a quite supportive council, and I would state, you know, to continue to give us an opportunity to come here to present our priorities, to ask questions as well, to hold us accountable as board, but also, you know, as a tool that does provide a significant service, and I say a symbiotic service that to both the town and then to the members of council. I don't know if that was a clear enough answer, and thank you.
Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Board Chair Peter and also the CEO, Darla Fraser. On behalf of council, again, thank you so much for your presentation. Clear, succinct, and really wonderful recap of what's going on with our library. For those of us that sit on the board, we're fortunate to see some of this before it comes to council and the general public. I'm always enamored by those that are part of the library team. And again, everyone that's involved, be that from Darla and those that follow in programming, we are a huge benefactor of the great things that are happening. As has been highlighted by Deputy Mayor and also by Councillor Pendergrass, the SROI is something that really caught my eye when it was brought to our board. And the methodology was one that, again, I think that those of us who sit on this side, but also even sit on the board, weren't scratching our heads. We were just wondering what the methodology is. So I look forward to that coming to a future council meeting and, of course, the board meeting. Looking forward to, of course, our makerspace. And again, this is something that has been, zeroing in on my radar for quite some time. Talking about the ROI on that, that is going to be a huge, huge win for our community sooner than later. So from a timeline perspective and anticipation, and I know there's, much wondering on when this is going to happen. Do we have a date when we can actually be there to see that the doors are going to open? Is there any possible timeline for whomever you have to speak to that might be able to give us a hint on when that could be? Are we talking early fall of 2025?
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Andrews. I think it all depends. The RFT has been published. We had 15 contractors attend the mandatory site visit last week. I believe the submissions have to be in by June 16th. I'm saying this all because I don't know the end date. I
Okay.
only know those milestones that are set in stone right now. And from those submissions, hopefully we get started right away.
While some of this is, of course, percolating, we are still moving ahead with some activity with under the umbrella of the makerspace itself, correct?
That is correct. And I believe Raghav, who's here tonight, has got some programming planned for over the summer.
Excellent.
He's already been delivering a few programs here and there.
Very much aware of it, and again, we're enamored to have his expertise, but also I think the community is going to benefit. And again, just if I may, through your worship, the economic benefit departmentally is also huge, and there's that connection between our economic development and culture department, where there is the a starter company, there's new initiatives that are coming that may be able to liaise with the makerspace specialist in that area. So I think that not only is it a one-prong opportunity, a touch point, but it's a touch point for so many other new businesses and entrepreneurs and maybe looking for some of that expertise as well. So there are going to be some huge benefits. But again, thank you so much. And also thank you to the staff who do a tremendous amount of work in the library itself.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Was there any other questions from council? Deputy Mayor?
Just one last thought, if I may. It's interesting, you talked about, that was such a great question that Councillor Prendergast asked about how the council and the library can do things together. And I just wanted to offer some affirmation to yourselves. So I think back to when I first met Ms. Fraser, like it was over 20 years ago that you and I sat in a dingy basement on Mill Street as part of the library board back then. And there was no counselors on that board. And it was a grind of board members on the library board, candidly, versus the council of the day, and bang, bang, bang. And it was just difficult to get things done. And I don't know that we were as productive as we wanted to be. And it's just grown so much under your leadership, Darla, and then Peter, and I know Mr. Ray's in the back there, just solid contributions from citizens over time who truly cared. And I think it was 2004, and now here we are in 2025, and what a difference 21 years in my timeline makes. So I just wanted to share what a strong board that you are, and I know that the two of you are on there as well, which kind of cements all of us together. Anyway, just kudos to you guys, because you're making wonderful contributions, and I feel like the library is in a position to do this. So kudos.
Thank you all very much for being here. We appreciate your presentation. Thank you. Up next, we do have Tim Thompson coming to talk about waterworks compliance and an update on uncommitted water supply capacity. Before Tim starts to speak, I just wanted to do a quick introduction as well, that we have a new member of staff team who's here in attendance. Ali Sloan has joined us in the capacity as HR manager. So we'd love to welcome you to your first meeting with us tonight. So thank you for being here. Okay, Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Post and members of council. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you tonight on what is a fairly complex topic. I hope to, through my presentation and through the report that has gone to council tonight, to provide some clarity, perhaps answer some questions, simplify things a little bit for what I say is a somewhat complicated and complex issue with regards to our wells, their capacities, our future plans for the water supply system. And also I've expanded the presentation a little bit from what I did last year, because I thought it would be worthwhile to spend a little bit of time talking about what's happening at the wells and what goes into that calculation, where at the end of the day, where we say this is how much water is available for future development. So the two kind of go hand in hand. So I thought I would start with a little bit of background information on the wells and then move more into the supply capacity calculations. And I've tried to emphasize visual graphs and things, whereas the report is a lot of text, a lot of numbers, a lot of tables. Hopefully some of these more visual representations will help. So
thank you, Tim. And just before you get started, just for council's understanding, we have moved going forward that anytime a staff member is presenting a presentation that has a corresponding report, it will be in the agenda immediately following the presentation. So you'll see that it's listed as 12.2.2.1. So immediately following Tim's presentations is where you can ask all the questions that accompany that report, and we will move that report before we go into consent agenda. Over to you, Tim.
Thank you. Jerry? Okay, thanks, if you don't mind. Okay, thank you. Okay, so as I mentioned a bit earlier, the purpose of this presentation is really to provide council with some additional information and some clarification on some of the items that are brought up in the report that's going to council tonight on uncommitted water supply capacity. I wanted to provide some additional information regarding the performance of the wells, their capabilities, and how they're performing under current conditions. As I did mention, I want to provide a few more visual representations than what I did last year to try and help with some understanding. And I also wanted to clarify how the water supply and allocation calculations are completed and the basis for the staff recommendations that come out of the report that you have tonight. We'll also talk about items for future consideration and next steps. Next slide, please. So just a little bit of background. I'm sure you're all fairly familiar with the well supply, but just to hit on some of the highlights. Currently, Orangeville's well supply, our drinking water supply is supplied 100% through groundwater wells. We don't have any surface water sources. Currently, it's provided through 12 wells located in 9 well fields located throughout town, and some of them are actually located slightly outside of town as well. And an interesting fact that I thought I'd share, that a municipally supplied water source has been provided to the residents of Orangeville and businesses in the town since at least the 1890s. Water used to be collected out of the spring grounds out near where well 5 is nowadays, and was gravity fed to the town through a wooden water main, parts of which are probably still residing under West Broadway. Not in use, but they're still there, and they do show up occasionally. So the town has a long history with municipal water supply, and a very successful one. It does have its ups and downs and its challenges, but I think we've weathered the storms fairly well. And we're at a point now where we need to take a careful look at where we stand. So currently the longest serving well in Orangeville in terms of service age is well 5. It's been in service for 54 years now. And the newest one is well 12, which has been in service for 18 years. If you take the average service life of all of the wells together, they average out to just slightly over 37 years. Typically, you can expect a well on average to last about 50 years. That is an estimate, that's an average. Some municipalities have wells that remain in service for over 100 years. But 50 is sort of the typical average. Once you get past that, you have to start thinking about future supplies. And the wells draw water from a variety of local aquifers of varying depths. And they can consist of deeper bedrock aquifers or shallow overburden aquifers. And they can range in depth from 17 to 61 meters in terms of overburden wells, and 17 to 55 meters in terms of the drilled bedrock wells. Next slide. So this is just a map to show where the current water supply wells are located. We can see well 10 way on its own there down by Highway 10. It's in the town of Caledon, and it's actually located in a very deep bedrock, very deep buried bedrock valley, which is filled with sand and gravel from when the glaciers retreated. And that draws water from a very deep overburden source. Well 5 and 5A, which is a well field that we'll talk about in more detail in a little bit, that's our largest supplying source of water, and it is in a shallow overburden. Those wells are only about 17 meters deep, and they have a high capacity and high transmissivity in terms of the aquifer and their capability to provide water, but they're also, because of their shallow nature, susceptible to contamination. The other wells located a little bit more in towards the middle of town are our groundwater wells that are drilled into the bedrock aquifers that run from west to east. All of those bedrock aquifers run from the west into the east, and they discharge into that very deep bedrock valley where well 10 is situated. And then just for clarity, I've put the future well 13, or what most people are familiar with, the Poland well, up there in the top left corner. Next slide, please. So just talking about where the majority of our water comes from, wells 5, 5A, and 6 provide the bulk of the town's water supply. Since 1985, those 3 wells provide an average of more than 50% of the town's annual water supply. So obviously they're very big players, and they've been in service for quite a long time, and they've done great service for us. But we'll talk about well 6 and well 5 in a little bit, and we'll drill down a little bit more into what's happening out there. And in fact, in 2024, those 3 wells provided 61% of the town's water, simply because wells 8 and 10 were out of service for the entire year of 2024 for maintenance and upgrade work. So what we're faced with are aging wells, declining water supply capacities, and maintenance and repair projects that have resulted in significant challenges in recent years with regards to water supply and our availability to set aside water for future development. And obviously, an adequate and reliable supply of safe water is critical in supporting the personal health and economic needs for the town and its residents. Without a water supply, safe water supply, the town could not function. So it's something that we really need to keep an eye on and have careful management of. Next slide. So this is the pie graph I use every year. This is the 2024 distribution of where the water came from overall for the town's supply. So again, we can see the largest slice is the red pie, which is wells 5 and 5A, 45%. And with well 6, adding an additional 16%. That's where we get our almost 62% of the 2024 water just from those 2 well fields. The other wells, the aquifers and the bedrock wells, well 7, 12, 11, 9A, 9B, and 2, roughly split up the rest of the pie. And then we can see that wells 8B and 8C and well 10, those slivers of the pie are very small because those wells really didn't run it in 2024 at all. Next slide. So water demands and consumption. So water demands, they vary from year to year, as we see in the graphs and in our data, and they change based on population, weather, economic activities, and other reasons. And we'll see in one of the graphs how COVID affected the water supply and the water demand in Orangeville. What the water system needs to do is it has to be able to supply the maximum day demand throughout during the year, while also providing sufficient water through flow and storage for fire protection. So that's the bottom line when you're looking at a safe water supply. You have to be able to supply the maximum day demand and have enough left over if there was a fire, because the worst case scenario is a major fire on maximum day. So you have to have a system that's capable of providing the flows that are required for that. And I know I talked about this last year, and everyone in council is familiar with the universal water metering. It was introduced in 2003, and it did have a significant impact on reducing water demands, specifically those maximum day water demands. Maximum day does, as you would expect, tends to occur in the summertime, and it's mostly due to discretionary water use such as car washing, pool filling, lawn watering, garden watering, etc. The other thing that's happened is water conservation efforts have been implemented by the town on a variety of different things. We've implemented unidirectional flushing programs for our water main maintenance. We are investigating a non-potable water supply at our water pollution control plant that will use non-potable water for things like flushing sewers, whereas potable water is used for that right now. We've closed the truck fill station at the operations center where we sold water to contractors who may not have even used that water in town. They may have used it for construction activities outside of town. So the town's done a lot, and also I want to mention that the system users, the public, has also done a lot in terms of conservation. I think there's a more awareness amongst the public now, and you know, the younger generations, the people are concerned about water conservation. So I think that the two have gone hand in hand, the efforts of the town residents and the efforts of the town itself to reduce water supply and the demand. And this is where it's very interesting. The average day demand in 2024 was 7,997 cubic meters in one day. And a cubic meter is 1,000 liters. So that's roughly 8 million liters of water in one day, which sounds like a lot, and it is, but you know, compared to historical values, it's the lowest maximum day we've had in 31 years. So something is happening. Last year it was down. This year it's down again. So it's 2 years in a row now, and it's very encouraging. Still, I don't want to, you know, say that good engineering practice says that we should continue to monitor and see if this is an actual trend, but 2 years in a row is certainly encouraging. And as I say, it's the lowest that it's been in 31 years. And if we look at terms of unadjusted per capita water demand, so the water demand per person per day, unadjusted means this also includes the ICI consumption, but it's a good indicator because it's based against population. That the unadjusted per capita water demand's gone from 390 liters per person per day in 2002 down to 255 in 2024. So that's down 35%. And the town has continued to grow during that time, but yet the unadjusted per capita water demands have continued to fall. So I think that's a reflection of the conservation efforts that have been implemented through the town and by the residents themselves. Next slide, please. So I just thought this one is a little busy, but I thought it was worth going back. I call this one a look back to 2002. 2002 was the last year where we had flat rate water in town for residential accounts. And we had a very significant water supply crisis in the summer of 2002. And I use this as an illustrative purpose as to what can happen when things go wrong or you get the perfect storm and you are running the razor's edge, so to speak, on this. So if we look at this graph, and it is a little bit busy, but basically the one on the right-hand side, the little table there, that was something I was monitoring during that week. And I was making notes as we went through the week, and I was recording the daily demands. And you can see that the daily demands were all up in the 14, 15, 16,000 cubic meter per day range. The average day during that period there, from July 3rd to July 20th, 2002, was 15,030 cubic meters per day. That was the average day during that almost 3-week period, or 2.5 week period. That average day is more than the maximum day that we've had since that time. So we were having like a maximum day every day for 17 days in a row. And what it was doing was depleting our water supply. You can see the standpipe, which is the storage facility on Commerce Road. It was out of water 3 days in a row. It had no usable water supply left in it. The West Sector Reservoir had fallen to 5 meters, which is less than half. And our two in-grade or at-grade reservoirs, the Dudgeon Reservoir and the South Sector Reservoir, which are represented by the green and pink line, they were down less than half as well. So what we were down to basically was fire supply only at that time. So to alleviate that problem and to get us out of the hole, the town initiated a complete lawn watering ban, and it took effect on July 19th. And we can see in that yellow shaded area how the levels started to rebound in the storage facilities. And also it corresponded with a decent stretch of weather where we finally got some rain. So I just wanted to show what can happen, just to put things in context that, you know, you have, these systems have to be carefully managed so that we can prevent this from happening. Next slide, please. So this is just the annual water production for each year from 2010 through 2024. And we can see here, just as an illustration, you know, things tick along pretty well until you get to 2020, and you can see that was the first year of the COVID pandemic. Water demands dropped considerably, and we also had a very wet year. The precipitation was 16% above the 40-year average. 2021, we were starting to come out of COVID, but there were still the lockdowns. Then remember we were out and then we were back in again with the lockdowns. Demand started to climb a little bit more. And then in 2022, we were almost back up to where we were before with the driest year in 40 years. And then in 2023, back down again. And these are the last 2 years where we've seen such encouraging results from the efforts of conservation on behalf of the residents and the town itself. Next slide, please. This is a graph just to show the little black dots joined by the red lines are the monthly volumes, pumping volumes from the municipal wells. And I just want to highlight the peaks. You can see the little, if you look at it like a mountain range, you can see the little peaks, and they almost all correspond with the month of July every year. That's your discretionary water use. That's your maximum day demands. And that's why you see those peaks in the summer. The valleys tend to be almost always line up in January. So it makes a lot of sense. And what I thought I would highlight on here with the blue line is that when you join the January line dots together, what you're really looking at is a baseline flow. The town is always going to require a minimum amount of water per day, per month, regardless of the type of year or whether it's hot or cold or wet or dry. That's your baseline flow. And we can see that coming out of the COVID, the baseline flow is back down around 225,000 cubic meters per month, which is equivalent to what it was back in the early part of the 2010s. So we've seen, again, sort of we saw a rise and then we saw a drop coming out of COVID. And then we can see in the last 2 years for 2023 and 2024, there's no real mountain peak in the graph on the last 2 years of the data. It's relatively flat. So that maximum day has been diminished fairly significantly over the last 2 years. Next slide, please. So this is just a graph showing the per capita water demand. And again, I've circled the bit where universal metering took effect in 2003. We didn't really see a drop in 2003 because people needed to go through a year where they got a year's worth of bills. And when we hit 2004, we can see that the per capita water demand dropped off significantly and has remained pretty much at that level ever since. So that's very encouraging, and it goes to show the benefits of a user pay system. And we can see that the red line is the population, which has continued to increase. You can see the town was growing fairly rapidly in the late 1990s up to 2000, and then the growth has been fairly consistent since then. Next slide. So again, I mentioned earlier that the existing town wells have been in service on average for about 37 years. Several of the wells have experienced declines in efficiency and supply capacity. We do rehabilitate the wells periodically when it's required in an effort to restore capacity and efficiency. However, this is generally less effective. The more often it's done, you get a diminishing rate of return each time that you do it. However, it does prolong the life of the well and helps you to restore that lost capacity to some degree. Currently, the supply capacities at well 2A, 6, 7, and 11 have been reduced due to issues with the wells. And when those wells aren't pulling their weight, the other wells have to make up for that lost capacity at those wells. Wells 5 and 5A are the town's highest capacity supply wells, and they've been called upon to make up the most shortfall from the other wells. Well 6, which I mentioned, is another one of the, we'll call them the big three, 5, 5A, and 6. It's declined the most. Its current safe capacity right now is only 38% of its permitted capacity. It hasn't run at its permitted capacity for probably 20 years. And we've rehabilitated that well at least 4 to 5 times in those 20 years. And we're only getting about 16 liters per second out of it. It's permitted for 42. So it's lost a significant amount of its capacity. Next slide, please. So this graph is the water levels at well 11 over the last 10 years. And I wanted to show everyone this, to show the effects of rehabilitation and the diminishing returns that you get each time that you rehabilitate a well. So first, sort of towards the middle, you can see that in December 2018, we have rehabilitated the well. And the bottom of the blue line you can see rose slightly in early 2019 by a couple of meters. Each horizontal line is about a meter. But then the well started to decline again until we got to 2020, where we were starting to get close to the critical depth of water, which is that red horizontal line on the graph. So in an effort to avoid cavitating the pump and running out of water, we reduced the flow rate at well 11 by 4%, and we reduced the total taking by 27%. And you can see that the water levels rebounded by several meters, but then started to decline again. So we rehabilitated the well again in the summer of 2024, and you can see that the levels bounced back up again by about 5 meters. But already since 2024, the levels have declined again by about 3 meters. So we're only 2 meters to the good now from where we were before the rehabilitation. So that just goes to show that the more you rehabilitate, the less effective it is and the shorter lasting it is. Next slide, please. This is a graph showing our reliance on wells 5 and 5A. So the red line indicates how much, in terms of a percentage of the town's water supply, came from wells 5 and 5A. And we can see at the extreme left of the graph, when it was 65%, that's back when the town had far fewer wells and more of the water came from 5 and 5A. And then it started to settle out around the 30% mark. It rose to in the mid 40s in the around 2010. And then it fell again as we were able to pump a bit more from well 6. But now that well 6 has lost more of its capacity, we can see that well 5 is going back up again to the mid 40s%. So we do rely a lot on that well field. Next slide. This is, I wanted to provide a visual representation of what happens when a well is out of service or reduced capacity, that the other wells have to pick up the slack. So this graph shows the red line at the bottom is how much of the town's water in any particular year came from well 6. The blue line is how much came from well 5 and 5A. And you can see if you disregard the bit at the very left-hand side where there was fewer wells, you can see that the two lines are almost a mirror of each other. When well 5 or when well 6 is producing, well 5 and 5A don't have to help out so much. You can see around 2013 when well 6 declined quite a bit, up went well 5. And then the reverse, when well 6 was rehabilitated and we were able to run it a little bit more, the reliance on well 5 went back down again. So that just is a visual representation of, if you lose it from somewhere, you've got to take it from somewhere else. And this is just goes to show you what happens when a well is not performing. Next slide. This one, I would really like us to focus on. This is the water level graph for well 5. Okay, so this is one of the two wells at well 5 and 5A. Those two wells are only about 6 meters apart. They're completed to the exact same depth. So really what happens in one happens in the other. So we can say that the hydrograph for well 5A is going to look exactly like this. The two wells behave in concert with each other. And as I mentioned earlier about over-reliance on well 5 and 5A and using it to make up for lost supply, we can see that quite clearly in this graph. First of all, I'd like to show that unlike the well 11 graph, which had quite high up and down lines, this one is very tight. Well 11 has a drawdown of about 11 meters when it pumps. That means when it starts pumping, the water level in the well drops about 11 meters. At well 5 and 5A, it only drops about a foot. And wells 5 and 5A operate at 3 times the rate of well 11, yet the water level only drops by a foot. And that goes to show us that that overburden aquifer that well 5 and 5A draw from is very large and has a very high transmissivity. The specific capacity of those two wells is very high. We get a lot of water for very little drawdown. But as we can see, the black line, which is the trend line, we can see that over the last 10 years, the water level at well 5 and 5A has been declining by about a foot a year. We need to reverse that trend because well 5 and 5A, because of its high storage capacity in that aquifer, it depletes very slowly, as we can see, only a foot a year, but it also takes a very long time to recover. So we need to do what we can to reduce our reliance on well 5 and 5A, and with some of these other projects that we're working on, so that we can reduce that taking and reverse that trend and get well 5 and 5A back up to where it was 10 years ago. So I just thought that was very illustrative of sort of the interaction between the wells and what happens in the aquifers. Next slide. I won't go on too long about this. This is a lot of numbers, but this just goes to show that well 2 its current safe capacity is 88%. Well 6 we talked about earlier is 38%. Well 7 is 96%, and well 11 is at 63%. There was no change in the safe pumping capacities this year from what the numbers were last year. So that safe pumping capacity of 14,523 cubic meters per day is the same as what it was last year. Next slide. So there we go. The total safe supply capacity is currently reduced to 14,523 cubic meters per day. That's 83.5% of the total permitted rate. So if all of the wells were working perfectly, they were at 100% capacity, there was no problems with them, we could pump 17,394 cubic meters per day. But we're not there because of the reduced capacities. Wells 8B, 8C, and 10 are currently out of service for maintenance and upgrades. And these are the sorts of things that having a reduced supply capacity makes difficult. It's harder to take wells out of service for needed repairs because you can't afford to take them out of service because you need the water. So it really handcuffs us in terms of operating flexibility. So that's something that we need to address and we need to carefully manage. The safe supply capacity, it has been reduced from 15,587 in 2016 down to the 14,523 today. And just to put that in context, that 1,064 cubic meter reduction since 2016, that's the equivalent servicing capacity of 950 homes. So it's not small potatoes. It's a fairly significant number. Next slide, please.
Tim, just before you continue,
yes.
You've got about 1 minute left of your allocated 30 minutes. So I'm going to just ask council to waive that part of the procedural bylaw so that Tim can continue. Councillor Stevens and Deputy Mayor, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you, Tim.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure that we were in compliance with our procedural bylaw, so I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, I'll try and. This is the same graph that I used last year. The purple dash line at the top is the safe supply capacity that we can see has declined over the years. The red triangle line is the maximum day demand. So we can see that it has dropped off the last 2 days. So we want that purple line and the red line to be far apart. They were getting too close together. The last 2 years, the red line has started to drop off, and we hope that that will continue. Again, it's still a little early to say that this is this is the new normal, but we'll continue to monitor. Next slide, please. So uncommitted reserve capacity and supply allocation. So here's where we get into the report. So historic and current analyses indicate that there is limited supply capacity to service additional development beyond what's already been approved. So that's an important distinction. Allocations of the water supply should always be carefully considered, as you well know, and be based on the best available information that's available at the time. The current uncommitted supply capacity is 1,746 cubic meters per day if all of the current approved developments were to proceed as planned. That number has actually gone up since last year, and there's a fairly significant reason for that, and I'll get into that in a minute. The uncommitted reserve capacity is considered small and is insufficient if you consider firm supply capacity, which is another thing that I would like to get into in a minute. Next slide, please. This is just an infographic that I put together using AutoCAD. So I call it the bucket drawing. So we've got our bucket of water on the left, which is the value of our full permitted rate from all of the wells, 17,394. First, we take away what we've lost in supply capacity, which is 2,871 cubic meters per day. That reduces it down to 14,523. That's our current safe pumping capacity. We take away the average 5-year average annual maximum day demand, which currently sits at 11,347. That number has been going down as we saw those peaks on the mountains have started to flatten out. That leaves us with a hydraulic reserve capacity of 3,176. Then we take away our committed supply capacity. So that's water supply that has been allocated to development that's either under construction or will be constructed. That's 1,430 cubic meters per day, leaving an uncommitted reserve capacity of the 1,746 cubic meters per day. So that's the number that's in the report. And then there's the potential supply capacity required. Those are things that are on the books but have not been developments that are on the books but have not been allocated water yet. So they don't necessarily have claim to water yet, but if you were to take them into account, that would reduce our remaining supply capacity down to 1,179 cubic meters per day. Next slide, please. So this is a simplified table of the big table that's in the report, all of those development tables. So this, I hope, simplifies it for everyone. We have our safe pumping supply capacity of 14,523. Our average maximum day demand over the last 5 years has been 11,347. So again, I mentioned earlier, we have to design for maximum day and fire flow. So when we subtract those two numbers, we're left with 3,176. We take away the 1,430, which is already committed to developments. That leaves us with 1,746, which is the equivalent to about 1,559 single-family dwelling equivalent units, which is a blended number. It takes into account fully detached homes, semi-detached townhouses, apartment units, etc. Is 1,559 or about 4,209 persons based on current population density. We have 567 cubic meters of active applications in progress that haven't been allocated water yet. That leaves us with the 1179 that we saw on the bucket drawing, which is equivalent to about 1,053 single dwelling equivalents or 2,800 people. Next slide, please. I won't spend a lot of time on this. I put this one in, but I kind of wish I hadn't now. It's a little bit complicated, but what I was trying to show was the change from year to year, because we've gone from a remaining uncommitted reserve capacity last year of 873 to 1,746 this year. So it's an increase of 873. And you might say, why? How did that happen? And what I was trying to show here is that a lot of the development from last year's tables have been moved from the development tables to the actual in-use consuming water tables. And I think what we're seeing is that when they're moving from the planning stage to the actual occupied people using water, they may not be using as much water as we are estimating in our calculations. We try to be conservative, and I think what's going to happen is the new smart meters and all of the tools that we're going to have are going to be able to allow us to hone in a lot more on, okay, what are single family detached houses using? What are these new townhome condominiums using? And we'll be able to refine our estimates a little better. So, but I just wanted to show that to sort of briefly explain, you know, how can the number go up? This is part of the reason why. Next slide, please. So the current uncommitted reserve capacity is 1,746, which I said was able to supply 1,559 single family equivalent homes. Well 5 and 5A provide up to 45% of the town's water, but they're in slow decline as we saw on that graph. The connection of the Pullen well, or well 13, will provide significant amount of potential net supply to the town. In fact, we could gain as much as 2,806 cubic meters per day for the town's well supply once that well is connected and fully permitted. Again, consider leveraging the future data from the smart water meters to refine our estimated demands. And I had said just a minute ago about actual water demands may actually be less than the estimated. Demands appear to be less once developments are moved from the estimated to the actual consumption tables. Recommend using the firm capacity of the water supply and allocation calculations. Firm supply simply means that it's the capacity of your system when your largest producing well is out of service. So in this case, it would be one of the 5 or 5A wells. So if we had a pump failure, say in July at well 5 or 5A, and for whatever reason, tariffs, border delays, whatever, the pump maybe didn't come for 2 months, we would have issues. So that would be when we would be looking at our firm supply capacity. And I would strongly recommend that in future we do look to use firm supply capacity as opposed to the full supply capacity. The other issue I wanted to make council aware of is that if it's a physical, like a pump failure at well 5 and 5A, if 5 fails, 5A can continue to pump. If it's ever a contamination issue at well 5 and 5A, because they are susceptible because of the overburden aquifer there, both those wells are going to be out of service. Remember, I had said that they're only 6 meters apart. They're completed in the same depth, the same formation. If one of them gets contaminated, they're both going to be offline. So I just would really caution 5 and 5A is our go-to well field, but if anything ever happens with those wells, we could be in really big trouble. And also, I would think ultimately we want to look towards having a supply capacity, surplus capacity of 2,000 cubic meters per day. Eventually, 2,000 cubic meters per day is pretty much what I would consider the minimum to allow the town, if a large employer or somebody came to town who was maybe a high water demand, it's a factory or something, you would want to have that water available. You'd hate to turn somebody away because you don't have water. You know, a place that's going to have 1,000 jobs or something, you'd hate to say, oh, sorry, we can't supply you with the water you need. So that a longer term goal, I would think, would be to move towards 2,000 cubic meters per day. Next slide. And I think this is my last slide. So just next steps, continue water conservation efforts with our leak detection programs, our water reuse initiatives, the new smart meters, refine our water sector use estimates, continue with our public awareness and education campaigns. I believe the manager of planning has a water allocation policy that's coming up to council later in 2025. We continue to work to connect the Pullen well to the town system. We're also looking at re-drilling well 6. That's the one that's down to 38%. We're hoping that we can re-drill another well adjacent to the existing one to restore at least some of the lost capacity. It'd be great if we got it all back, but I'm not holding my breath. But right now we're down to 16 out of 42 liters per second. Even if we could get it up to say 25, anything is a bonus. Begin work at looking at the next water supply source, which would be well 14. As we know, the Pullen well has taken like a decade to connect. The next well will probably take as long. So it's probably a good idea to always be starting the next one. We'll continue our rehabilitation work and careful management of the existing supplies. We've got a water supply management plan that's coming up, and we want to leverage and optimize the operation of our existing wells to maximize our total takings. That will come out of the water supply management plan, hopefully, where perhaps we can maybe reduce the taking at one well to get more taking to come out ahead, so to speak, at another well. So because there is mutual interference between some of the production wells, and we might be able to move some of the takings around to maximize it and to minimize the interference between any adjacent wells. And I think that's all I have. I apologize for going so long, but I'd be pleased to answer any questions that there might be.
Thank you so much, Tim, and no need to apologize. That was a great presentation. I'll turn it to questions in just a second. Before I do, could I just get a mover and a seconder for the recommendation that report INS 2025-26, the update on uncommitted water supply capacity, be received? Councillor Andrews and Deputy Mayor. So Councillor Sherwood, go ahead.
Yes, Your Worship. Thank you through you to Mr. Thompson. Thank you very much for the detailed report. Boy, you help educate us a lot on the wells. One of my, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we acquired well 13 in 2019. And I see in your report, you're talking about it not being in service till, 9 or 10 years later. Why does it take so long to get that well up? Why are we talking almost 10 years to get it up and operating?
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Sherwood. I'd say the biggest change and the biggest slowdown has been the source water protection steps that we need to go through. We've had to update our Tier 3 water model, which in turn, once that's been updated, we have to redelineate our wellhead protection areas, and we have to determine the level of treatment that needs to be done and the permitting process in terms of what is actually available there. So it has taken quite a long time. There's also been some legal delays, and I know there was some negotiations, etc. But the whole process, basically, we were one of the first municipalities to go through this, to bring a new groundwater well on board through the new source water protection regime. Just for a matter of comparison, the last well we brought on prior to well 13, it was well 12, and the whole process took about 2 years from start to finish. So there's a lot more legal hoops to jump through, but most of it is related to source water protection, which has really come to the fore in the last 5 to 10 years, because well 12 was brought online in 2007. So it's been almost 20 years. So there's a lot of changes. So I hope that answers your question.
Just to follow up, Your Worship.
Sure, go ahead, Councillor Sherwood.
So you think it's pretty realistic that we're looking at it being that much longer to wait for it?
It's through Your Worship to Councillor Sherwood, yes. And I had sort of anticipated this question. So I had asked some of my colleague, Irina Contract, she's the source water protection staff member. And I said, could you just give me a bit of a point form summary as to how long the rest of this process is going to take? So we have applied for the permit to take water for the new Poland well, and we're actually anticipating receiving that permit in the next week or two. We're hoping that it's going to be issued at the full permitted rate of 42 liters per second. There was some talk initially that the well would only be permitted at 25 liters per second, and we would have to run it for 4 or 5 years to gather observation well information, water level data, etc. We're now somewhat optimistic that it's going to be issued at the 42 liters per second in the next week or two. Following that, there's the Tier 3 water budget modeling, the scenario simulation, and the redelineation of the wellhead protection areas for all of the town wells. That's actually been underway since May of 24 and is continuing. The modeling in part allows us to get that permit to take water, and right now we're anticipating that Tier 3 modeling will be completed in the fall of 2025. Then after the approval of the Tier 3 study, there's the associated technical work by the Ministry of the Environment. This time frame is largely unknown, but we'd anticipate 6 to 10 months after the Tier 3 modeling work is complete. So we would anticipate possibly February 2026 for that. And then while that is going on, the engineering design can be done, because once we get the permit to take water and we know, okay, we have 25 liters a second, we have 42 liters a second, we can go ahead and design the system to treat water at the initial permitted rate, with it being expandable to the higher permitted rate. Or if we get the higher permitted rate initially, we just build it out to full capacity at that time. That can be done consecutively with the Tier 3 work and the technical review by the ministry. And that could go on, and we would hope that that would be done probably by June or July of 2026. And then following that, it would be the Drinking Water Works permit and the Drinking Water Works license. The consultants who do the design work would be responsible for completing those applications on the town's behalf. And we would hope that that would be submitted around July 2026, once the design work is done. And then the ministry takes typically about 6 months to issue a drinking water license. So now we're looking at early 2027, which is when construction would start. Construction could be a year to a year and a half. So we're looking at probably mid 2028 until the well is actually connected to the system. So there's a lot of moving parts, and a lot of it is related to source water protection. A lot of these hoops we didn't have to jump through when we did well 12 because they just didn't exist at the time.
Yeah, and just to note, that's all provincial legislation that holds us up. And in 2023, that was what we had done a delegation to the minister about, was to help us with some of the timelines and red tape to be able to move it along. And they've been very supportive. So I think without some of that advocacy work, it probably would have taken even longer than what we're anticipating. So I'm glad to hear that we're on track and things are going well. And when we get to the government relations advocacy plan, you'll note we'll talk about the Pullen well again in that. So Councillor Andrews, then Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Mr. Thompson, an incredible report. As I think all of us have been educated time and time again, you're eloquent with what your information is, and more importantly, you are in fact providing us with a lot to think about. I've gone on record, and I've said this before on council, not only when you came last year, but whenever water has come up in the conversation, this is a precious commodity. I consider it more valuable than gold and anything else, especially when you are looking at the importance within our community. If we want to grow in some capacity, we want to maintain our existence that we have in our community, be that from an operations perspective. And you highlighted some of the ebbs and flows of the water, and historically, which I was in fact in awe as you've spoken about it. Where I'm going with this is primarily, of course, the unassigned capacity. We've spoken about some of the developments that are underway, some that are potentially going to happen, we think, at some point. But one that came to mind is one that we just had a presentation from Great Gulf, which is, of course, the Citrus Group. And many in our community were, in fact, I think, informed of their sales office that just opened up this past weekend. And what I did notice is, in fact, they're promoting multi-generational housing, meaning that we have more than typical family of 4, 3. We could have 7. We could have more than that. As we move forward, is there a calculation within your department and the planning department that takes that into account? Because I know that we've spoken about the capacity that is already defined as being allocated, but I'm also going to highlight one other point as you'll answer my question. Heading up our Affordable Housing Task Force, which part of this is going to end up providing with what I hope is some solutions to the housing stock crisis that we have in our community. But I also have to, as part of that report, take into consideration exactly what you've spoken about. So that will be my first question, and I'll zero in on one that you spoke about, some of our aging wells as well.
Okay. Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Andrews. Yes, that is something that we're aware of. The most recent census data that we have, and which is I pull the population numbers out from that to calculate my single dwelling equivalents, is based on 2.7 people per household. That's as of 2021. I think we're going to see that change in 2026 and again in 2031. So yes, we will be adjusting those numbers as we go forward, recognizing that a lot of the new development will likely see multi-generational families and we'll see those numbers of occupants go up. So I think, again, that's where the smart water meter data is really going to come in handy, because we can go in and we can pull that information out, because we'll know where those higher demands are coming from, and we'll be able to say, okay, the multi-generational houses are now using 1.1 cubic meters per day as opposed to 0.8, which is the current number we're using for our single dwelling equivalent. So I think it's going to be ever evolving. The other thing I'm not sure how we're going to handle, but is existing houses that perhaps get modified, because I understand that's a fairly popular thing nowadays, is a second suite or perhaps even an auxiliary use somewhere. We need to figure out how we're going to do that. So I think the smart meter data is really it's going to be an excellent tool in our toolbox that's going to help us analyze these things a lot closer, and we'll be able to take those changes in people per household into account.
If I may, as a follow-up, and again, I thank Councillor Sherwood for bringing up the pool and well. For those of us that have been at the table here since our last term, again, you know, we were anticipating, and I think that clarity helps to provide us with an understanding of where we're going, but also at the same time, the smart meters are going to help out tremendously. There's so much to unpack here. We could spend hours talking about this, and I know that we don't want to as much as we would like to, and I think my fellow members of council will like to say, okay, time out, Mr. Andrews. Having said that, I look at one thing that you highlighted verbally and also in depth in your report is the aging wells. And I'm really concerned about that. And again, I think we all are. And again, an anomaly can happen. Something catastrophic can happen. You gave the example there of, you know, well 5 and 5A. If something happens, you know, all of a sudden we have pressure, and do we have the capacity? I mean, you've identified that in your report. So, you know, do we have a backup if, you know, a catastrophic failure occurs in not only 5 and 5A and some of our other aging wells? Do we have a backup, Mr. Thompson, just in case something happens?
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Andrews, yes and no. Like I say, we don't have right now. The ace up our sleeve is the Pullen well. It's not that far off. It's still a ways off, but there's that. Hopefully we can gain over 2,800 cubic meters per day from that well, surplus supply capacity that can come to Orangeville. But if something catastrophic was to happen before then, we would have to look seriously at trying to limit consumption as best we could. And much like, I think it was Calgary when they had their huge water main break, and they asked residents to, you know, don't flush the toilet all the time, or limit your showers or what have you. We might have to do something like that, depending on how catastrophic it was. And it may only be something that needs to be done in the summertime. But to be completely honest with you, yes, we would be scrambling, and there would be some fairly significant asks of the residents and businesses in town to get us through.
And I thank you for that clarification and honesty. And again, your expertise is really noted. Last point, I remember the last time in 2002 in the summer on where conservation is certainly a part of our, I think, our obligation. And we see that with members of our community. For those of us that have, of course, our rain barrels, we're using those properly. We've been fortunate to have, you know, a significant amount of rain recently. But I think the last point is that I think all of us on council understand the importance of what water is in our community, and we want to make sure that you're being supported properly. And again, kudos to the other members of staff who looked at it from a visionary perspective and a future forward-thinking perspective as well. That's all I have.
Thanks, Councillor Andrews. Deputy Mayor, and then Councillor McIntosh.
Just really quickly, thank you, Your Worship. That is a great Joe Friday presentation, just the facts, ma'am. Like, that was amazing what you just did, so thank you for that. My questions, I think, have been answered, but if I was looking for the headline and just tuning in, my headline would be the town is in good shape overall. The risk is low, moderate, so everyone is fine, and we should all feel fine about where we are. The controversy and the headline would be, why are you people building more buildings and allowing more people to come to our town when water is, being discussed in this way? And I guess my question and the headline in the newspaper to me would be we're just fine. We can handle these developments. We can handle these extra people. We need to conserve because that's what we should be doing. But everyone should take a breath and know that it's just fine. Would you agree with that statement?
Through you, Your Worship, to Deputy Mayor Taylor, I would agree with that. Our uncommitted reserve capacity is the 1,746 cubic meters per day. So that's if all of the development that has been approved proceeds as it is. So what that leaves is the developments that haven't been allocated water yet. And that's where I think the new water allocation policy is going to be very helpful. I understand that's coming to council in a little bit. In terms of very carefully allocating that water supply to new development, but then also at the same time being assured that those developments are going to use the water supply that they are allocated. Under the old rules, we've had numerous developments that have been allocated water and have sat and have not been developed for years and years. So I think, yes, as it stands right now with the development that has been allocated water to date, I think we're just fine. You know, we just have to be prudent in securing new supply sources and doing everything we can to maintain and manage our existing wells. But no, there's no need for any panic at this point in time.
So if I may, again, trying to be blunt and speak, we pack out for this town is, depending upon who you talk to, somewhere between 36 and 38,000 people. What I'm hearing from you is, hey, we're good for that. That's kind of what we just talked about. If we had more development come to the town, or there's annexation and, you know, what have you, would the answer from yourself be no? We're at 36 to 38,000 people and you can't come. Is that where we would be based on the situation that we'd find ourselves in at that point?
Through you, Your Worship, to Deputy Mayor Taylor, I just want to say that we're in good shape with the development that has been allocated water. I don't think that takes us to build out. I don't believe. I think the ultimate population within the current boundaries of Orangeville is supposed to go to 36,000 and change or something like that. I don't believe that we have sufficient water supply capacity for build out.
Mr. Koslek.
Yep, through Your Worship. Just wanted to elaborate a little bit more on what Mr. Thompson had indicated before. Some of the things we're looking at doing to gain capacity. Well 10 has been out of service. That was the one that we had some rust in the water, or iron, and it's been out of service since 2024. We're redoing the filter media in that well. It's expected to come back online probably in September. And once that's back online, we'll look at the option of redrilling well 6 that Mr. Thompson talked about. So we're doing little initiatives to gain additional capacity. And as you mentioned, the pull-in well is expected to come online in about 3 years. So that'll give additional capacity too. One of the things we're doing is a master plan, looking at 3 or 4 different sources for future well sites. So we can protect those, put them in our source water protection, include the planning around those areas to help us plan and grow for the future. So a lot of it may not give to total build out or if the town did expand, but we are planning for the future. So when that does happen, maybe in 5 years, you have that large expansion, we'll have plans in the books to be able to have new well sources come online.
Councillor McIntosh.
Thank you, Your Worship. A quick question, Tim. Thank you for the presentation, by the way. If my memory serves me correct, about 25 years ago, we shut down a well because it was contaminated. I believe it was on Lackey Drive. Is that well still shut down?
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor McIntosh, yes, the well still exists, but the pumping equipment and the pump house have been removed. So the well is just sitting there. And yes, you are correct. It was removed from service in 2001. It was a 300 gallon a minute well. So it was a fairly significant supply source for the town. But because of low levels of TCE contamination, it was below the drinking water standard. But the council of the day decided that they wanted it was to be removed from service. So it was. But the well is still there.
Just to follow up then, with today's newer technology, are we not able to use that well or recommission it and being able to take that chemical out of the water that we shut it down for?
Through you, Your Worship, yes, the technology with more than 20 years has elapsed since that well was taken offline. At the time, we did a pilot program where we were investigated air stripping the TCE out of the well. And what we basically did was aerated the water. It stripped the TCE out of the water and put it into the air, and then the air was discharged out of the pump house. But at the time, there was no guarantee that the results of TCE would always be zero. So council of the time decided to take it offline. But there's been vast improvements in technology. And certainly well 4, which is the well that was taken offline, we could certainly revisit as part of that water supply master plan, looking to say, okay, can we revisit this well now 20 years later and maybe get it back? The only problem being is that we don't have a permit to take water for it anymore. So all of these new hoops, the source water, are going to have to be jumped. But, you know, it's a well and it's sitting there. So there's no, you know, no reason not to look at it.
Thank you.
Was there any additional questions from members of council? Councilor Prendergast? No? Okay, we're good. So with that then, thank you very much for being here, Tim. And I will just call a vote on the motion to receive. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move into the consent agenda. The following items have been compiled under the consent agenda to facilitate a single vote for council consideration. Council may remove any item from the consent agenda for individual consideration. Before I pass it to council to let me know what you'd like to remove, I would just like to let council know that I would like to remove item 13.1.2. Was there anything else that anybody would like to remove? Councillor McIntosh.
Thank you. 13.3.5.
Perfect. Anybody else have anything to remove? No, seeing none. The recommendation then is that all consent agenda items for the current council meeting listed under 13.1 staff reports, 13.2 correspondence, and 13.3 committee board minutes be received or approved as presented, with the exception of the items that are being removed for individual consideration, which is 13.1.2 and 13.3.5. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Prendergast and Councillor Andrews, all in favor? And that is carried. The first one that we're removing is 13.1.2. I removed that. That's our government advocacy plan. And the only reason I removed it is because you'll note in the report that there is a conversation about the advocacy priorities. I think it's important that we have a brief discussion about that, but also it's important to note that the delegations for AMO have opened and they do close this Friday. So I think it would be great if as a council we could align on those priorities. I do have a suggestion on which ones we should move forward with, but I'd be open to hearing from everybody else as well. The ones that I would like to move forward for delegations at the upcoming AMO conference in August would be about the Pullen Well. We're at a point right now where we would like to delegate to talk about potential funding opportunities that the province can support us with bringing that well online. I think the presentation from Tim will help to reiterate the importance of that item as well. Additionally, I'd like to delegate to the Ministry of Transportation regarding the Ontario gas tax allocation and what their plans are moving forward. I think it's going to be important when we talk about our Fare Free Transit initiative to be able to understand what that's going to look like in the upcoming years. And I'd also like to delegate about the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund. We've already done one delegation, and I do have other municipalities who'd like to join us for a delegation for that one, who are also being excluded from that fund unfairly. And we'd like to ask again that the Minister of Finance look at the current calculation on how they get there. So those would be the three that I would like us to focus on. And I'd be open to comments, questions, or additions to that if anybody has any. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you for bringing this forward. I think the three that you brought up make perfect sense to me, and I'm in complete alignment. I would like to throw this out to council, and it's something that's just been on my mind since the last budget period, and it really is, it's the number 3 on this list, and it's the Ontario Provincial Police. And just because we don't know truly what the plan is moving forward. And it gives me great angst that we don't know, because the amount of increase, it could be $500,000 if you think back to what that math would be, or it could be more depending upon, or less, I guess, depending what. I'd like to know what they're going to do, and they shouldn't leave it longer. So it'd be great to have some conversations about that and put some pressure on them to say, you're leaving us in a lurch as a tiny little municipality and a big bill.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Councillor Andrews?
Thank you, Your Worship. As Deputy Mayor Taylor has indicated, I'm also in full alignment with what you've outlined, in addition to the OPP. And I know that, the fire station is one of those that is sitting there too as well. We've had a previous discussion with the ministry. One of the luxuries that, and I'll just take 30 seconds on this, one of the luxuries that we have is when we have, members of council, for example, I'm just going back a couple of weeks ago, Councillor Prendergast, put forth a motion to respond to Bill 5. As a result, we had the minister who contacted myself and Councillor Pendergrass, where that advocacy didn't require us to go to AMO, didn't require us to go to Roma or OSUM. It helps when we're connected to other ministries, when we vocalize our concerns, and we do so in a way that is appropriate, professional, and tactful. And I think that that advocacy also helps out. But, you know, attending these particular conferences and the approach that you're identifying, I think these are the priorities that we have to identify. And, you know, no doubt that this particular report, and again, I want to thank Ms. Lecce for her incredible work on this, because it has helped to itemize very clearly. Lastly, I think we enable ourselves to present ourselves in front of the ministries effectively. And I hope that the ministries themselves are listening, and they do so. But I think that advocacy is really, really critical. And I, again, appreciate the list that you've indicated as such as the priorities.
Thank you. Was there any other questions or comments from council on those ones? My only hesitancy, Deputy Mayor, and the only reason I left it off of my list, because I agree with you, I think it's hugely important that we understand where we're moving forward on the OPP. And the only reason that I left it off of my delegation list is because there's 300 plus other municipalities that are in the same boat as us. So I'm not certain that we'll get a positive response from the Solicitor General's office, but we can always ask for a delegation and see what they say.
The other thing we could simply do is wait to the very end when the large room is on and question then if that's the case. But, you know, it would be good if there was some pressure put on them just to give us an idea.
No, I'm happy to add that to the list, and we can request a delegation and see where it goes from there. So if there's no further questions, I would change the motion just slightly from what's in the agenda to read that Report CAO 2025-005 Government Relations Advocacy Plan be received, and that Council adopt the 2025-2026 Advocacy Work Plan, Appendix A, as presented, and that Council adopt the 2025-2026 Advocacy Priorities in Appendix B as presented, and that staff be directed to request delegations with the appropriate ministers during the Association of Municipalities of Ontario conference from August 17th to 20th, 2025 on the following 4 priorities: the Pull and Well, the Ontario Gas Tax, the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, and the OPP. And that Council directs staff to report annually on the advancement of advocacy priorities. Could I get a mover and a seconder? Councillor Andrews and Councillor Stevens. Any last questions on that one? All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. We will then move over to 13.3.5, and I will turn it over to Councillor McIntosh.
Thank you, Your Worship. This came about last Tuesday. We had a seniors age-friendly committee meeting, and this come out of it. One of our members suggested something along the lines of complimentary recreation fees for the month of June. We've hammered it out, and this is what we've come up with. And if I could ask staff, Sharon in particular, to maybe explain, you know, do we have enough time to do this for the 1st of June? And how do you see it working?
Sharon, I'll turn it over to you.
Through your Mayor Post to Councillor McIntosh. Thank you, Councillor McIntosh. Absolutely. Each year, staff do commit to June is Seniors Month. June is also Recreation and Parks Month, so the two go very nicely hand in hand. Stephanie and Lindsay, who were 2 staff members who just left a few minutes ago, I've already been working with them to make a plan, and I just have to press literally send on my print to create a pass. So essentially what will happen is we will promote to new participants, because the committee was very strong in their advocacy of getting new people out to try it for the month of June. We will be selecting a certain number of classes where we have complimentary drop-in spots available, and all members of the community will need to do is to come to Alder Recreation Centre and pick up their complimentary pass. It will give up to 3 visits during the month of June to those pre-selected times and days for those classes. Does that make sense, Councillor McIntosh, in terms of process? And
Councillor
we're ready to
McIntosh?
go. We're ready to promote it next week and get people out to try it.
Yes, thank you. It's easy for the committee. We just make a suggestion and pass it on to staff, but thank you for your speedy work on this.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Okay, so the recommendation then is that the minutes are approved and that council endorse the resolution as printed. So can I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor McIntosh and Councillor Stevens. Any last questions? All in favor? And that is carried. There were no notices of motion submitted prior to the meeting. Was there any notices of motion at today's meeting? Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, Your Worship. I will be bringing forth a motion on the June 9th meeting with regards to lobbying the provincial government to get back on the reassessment cycle. Tax bills just went out and they're still using 2016 valuations. So that will be my motion on the 9th.
Thank you, Councillor Sherwood. That's a good one. So you'll work with staff and that will be discussed at the next meeting in June then. Any additional notices of motion? No, seeing none. Was there any announcements tonight? Councillor Andrews?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have two. First, I want to thank you for leading the charge for our Rooted in Community food drive. I know that others from the food bank and many others are part of the committee that put this together. It was really something special to be a part of. And again, I want to thank all the members of our community who contributed, donated, be that with food or monetary donation, but just the spirit of our community came together on a cold spring day. And I have to admit that it was really fun at Zone 5 and some of the other zones that I was fortunate to drop by. But again, I want to thank our community and most importantly, you for leading the charge on that. The other is, again, a shameless plug for an event that is coming up, which is, and I'll be doing this in June, again, just as a reminder, the Affordable Housing Task Force has our Community Information Open House Wednesday, June 18th at the Tony Rose Upper Banquet Room, 7 to 9. I'm hoping members of the community who are watching the council session this evening can spread the word. Opportunity to find out about affordable housing options, including ARUs, the new building code. We have some concepts that have been created from members of our task force. My co-chair who's sitting next to me, I know that we're looking forward to engaging with the community.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Councillor Stevens, and then Councillor McIntosh.
Thank you. So National Accessibility Week is here. To celebrate, Orangeville Recreation is putting on some free swims. So I recommend that everybody goes out, gets in the pool. It's a good way to get out there and see the community. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor McIntosh.
Thank you. Much like Councillor Andrews, I have an event on the 18th. It's the seniors luncheon. It starts at 11:30. I'll be bringing it up again at the next council meeting, but I just want to give a heads up on that. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor, and then Councillor Prendergast.
Just ever so quickly, the Blues and Jazz Festival is this weekend, what I would call one of the greatest weekends of the year in Orangeville, and I encourage everyone to go. And I would like to call out the BIA. I'm on that committee, and they have donated to that and worked hard to make that happen as well. So please all go and support.
Councillor Prendergast.
Thank you. Just some updates from Sustainable Orangeville. Our grant application is now open until July 1st. If you have any projects in mind that promote sustainability in town, there is an exhaustive list and some ideas online, or you can reach out to me. In addition, on Saturday, before you head out to Blues and Jazz, don't forget to come and pick up your free tree at the water tower. If you signed up though, only if you registered. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other announcements? All good. All right, wonderful. So we will move into bylaws. The recommendation is that all of the bylaws for the current council meeting listed under item 17, which is 17.1 through 17.3, be read 3 times and finally passed. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Sherwood and Councillor Stevens, all in favor? And that is carried. And finally, a motion to adjourn. Councillor McIntosh, seconded by Councillor Prendergast, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you for joining us tonight.